Okay, so this is just going to be a short little video to talk about coterminal angles. And you really should be able to do most of this without my explanation, but hey, this video helps, then that's good. I'm glad that I made it. So really, if you remember in class, you need the family, you need the quadrant, and you need the value. So if you can look at something and figure out what quadrant it's in without adding or subtracting 360 or 2 pi, then by all means go for it. Like negative angles sometimes, like this negative angle, negative 135, we learned how to sketch this. This is going to be in quadrant 3. So if you can go through there and figure out what family it is and what quadrant it is without adding or subtracting, then you can go ahead and do that. But if you can't, then you might have to add or subtract 2 pi. So in this case, I would need to subtract 2 pi, and remember I want my denominator to match. So I'm going to subtract 12 pi over 6, which gives me 7 pi over 6. And now the process for going through this is exactly the same. I can see my family is the pi over 6 family. This is in quadrant 3, so tangent's going to be positive in quadrant 3. And the tangent of pi over 6 is square root of 3 over 3. So that's going to be my value. Okay, now for this one here, the next one down, it's a reciprocal function, so first I'm going to write cosine. Now this time, since it's negative, I'm going to add 2 pi. And again, I need my denominator to match, so I'm adding 6 pi over 3. And so this is going to give me 2 pi over 3. And now again, the process is the same. So my family is pi over 3. This is in quadrant 2. Cosine is negative in quadrant 2. And the cosine of this would be 1/2. So the secant is going to be the reciprocal. It'll be negative 2. Okay. Over here, this is another reciprocal, so I'm going to write tangent above it. Again, this is one that you would add 360, and so I'm going to get 225. 225 is in quadrant 3 and part of the pi over 4 family. Okay, so in quadrant 3, tangent and cotangent are positive, and the tangent of pi over 4 is 1, so the cotangent would also be 1. And finally here, sine of 600, so I'm going to subtract 360, and we get 240. 240 is in quadrant 3, and so that's going to be part of the pi over 3 family. In quadrant 3, the sign is negative, and the sine of pi over 3 is square root of 3 over 2. Okay? So again, the process is almost identical to what we were doing before. Okay, but now you just have to add or subtract 2 pi or add or subtract 360 to get to the angles that we have been doing. Okay? So for these 4, before you figure out the values, okay, I want you to pause the video and I want you to just go through and add or subtract 360 or 2 pi and figure out what family and what quadrant these are in. So don't quite do the values yet. Just add or subtract 360 or 2 pi and figure out the family and the quadrant. Okay, so here you go. Okay, for the two on the left here, you had to subtract 360 for both of them. And you see both of them end up being in quadrant 1. Okay, remember 30 degrees is pi over 6, and 45 degrees is pi over 4. And then on the other side, I didn't mean to trick you, but this one does not need added or subtracted. 3 pi over 4 is good. Okay, so it's just the pi over 4 family in quadrant 2. And then you would add 12 pi over 6 here to the bottom one to give me 5 pi over 6, and that's also in quadrant 2. Okay, so now you can go through and find the values. So cosine in quadrant 1 is positive, and pi over 6 is going to give you square root of 3 over 2. Okay, sine of pi over 4 is square root of 2 over 2, so that means cosecant is just going to be square root of 2. Sine of pi over 4 is square root of 2 over 2, and again that's in quadrant 2, so it's positive. And now tangent and cotangent are negative in quadrant 2, and the pi over 6 family, tangent would be square root of 3 over 3, so cotangent is just square root of 3. Okay. So again, it's pretty much the same as what we have been doing. You're just adding or subtracting 360 or 2 pi to get to the values that we have been doing. Okay, so the back, there's just 8 more examples. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video and try all 8. Okay, so here are your answers. And again, you're adding or subtracting 360 or 2 pi till you get to a value in the unit circle. Then you can figure out the family in the quadrant and then the value. Okay, don't forget for your reciprocal functions to flip them at the end. And on the next screen, and again, if you need to go back or pause the video or rewind or whatever, if you didn't get those answers, that's okay. But for this one, the last two, notice that you had to subtract more than once. So when you subtracted 12 pi over 6, it wasn't enough. And here, when you subtracted 360, that wasn't enough. So just keep subtracting or keep adding until you get to a value in the unit circle that you can figure out from there. Okay? If you are having any issues with this at all, you can rewatch these videos. Again, there's 4 videos for the notes that explain all of the unit circle values. Or shoot me an email. Okay? Remember, when we get back from Thanksgiving break, we're going to take a whole period just to review and practice and practice and practice before your test on either Thursday or Friday, depending on if you're an even or an odd day person. Okay?